I'm really excited to have Kevin Young on the show. He is probably one of the greatest gang experts, definitely in this area, probably on the East Coast. And it's really cool with everything that's happening with immigration and everything about people coming in and out of this country and the involvement of gangs. I thought it would be really good for you to come in and kind of give everybody around here a heads up on like what's going on in our communities and even on a national level.
Yeah, so, excited to be here.
Yeah, well, it's always fun. It's always fun. So everybody buckle up.
Should be interesting.
Everybody buckle up and get ready for this.
Interesting.
So talk about a little bit about yourself, like how you got to Bedford County and what you've experienced.
So I grew up, I was born in Norfolk, but didn't stay there very long.
Okay.
We moved to Roanoke when I was like three or four. Grew up in Roanoke, ended up in Amherst County because we have my mom's family is from that area. And then, so lived there for several years. Ended up going to the police academy in Salem, Cardinal Criminal Justice Academy with the Town of Bedford Police Department.
Okay.
And then eventually merged over to the sheriff's office after 5 or 6 years at the town.
You saw us and you're like, I want to be them.
Yeah.
Blue is not my color.
It's
I want
not my
to be brown.
color. Mm-hmm.
Brown, you look good in brown.
Well, I'm back in blue now, so yeah.
So talk a little bit about your academy experience. What was the academy like? How old were you when you went to the academy?
I was 21. Okay. 21 years old when I went to the academy. It was a bit of a culture shock.
Okay.
I see kids going through the academy now, and I'm like, man, I'm not sure they would have made it when I went through.
I guarantee you would.
It was a lot different back then. We had to wear a uniform. We had inspection every morning before the class started. We had to stand in formation, and the instructors came out and inspected everybody's uniforms, make sure you had your edge dressing on your shoes and Irish pennants under your pockets and all that sort of stuff, clean shaven. And
they didn't yell. They didn't yell at you.
Not at all. No, they were very kind.
Did they?
Courteous.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, made you feel welcome at home.
Yeah.
Just like a home.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
Yep. It was just like a home. But PT'd every day. That we PT'd in the afternoon. I think we were the first class that ever went through that academy that did not have Fun Fridays.
Well.
Yeah.
What are Fun Fridays?
Well, Fun Friday was you went outside and you played like a sport or something during PT time, as opposed to having to run in formation and sing cadence.
A police academy recess.
Yeah, it was police academy recess. But if everybody did well throughout the week and there was no issues and everybody kept up in their run and we didn't have to run in circles waiting on people and stuff like that, then you got reward. Oh yeah. Just they would make you. We'd either go in somebody's yard and do flutter kicks until everybody caught up, or
there's always one.
Yeah, there's always that guy. So sometimes I was that guy. I'll be honest with you. But
like, I don't want to do flutter kicks. I'm gonna run a little slower.
Yeah,
today.
I'm just gonna run a little slower.
All right. So you get done with the academy. What year was that?
04.
Okay. And so you get back from the academy. You go to the town. Well, it was the city of Bedford.
It was then.
And what was that like, policing a small town?
So the sergeant that I worked for back then, we worked 8-hour shifts. Were terrible. You worked 7 days of 4 to midnight. Then you were off for one day. Then you worked 7 days of 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Then you were off for one day.
Always looking out for your best end.
And then you worked 7 days of midnight to 8 a.m. And then you were off for 5. But all you did was sleep the first 3 because you just worked, 20 days in a row or whatever. So
and my body is not used to this.
Yeah. So I rode with my field training officer for the 4 to midnight shift, and then the 8 to 4 shift, and then the first midnight shift. Sergeant came in the officer's room, threw me a set of keys, and said, "You're not going to figure this out until you're on your own."
And let you go.
So that was my field training was 14 days.
Okay. And you're like, here, the city is yours.
Yeah. 90% of the job is gut instinct, is what he told me. He said, unless you do something illegal, unethical, or immoral, then it can be fixed.
Okay.
Figure it out. So I said, okay.
So any fixes that first year?
No, I was pretty good that first year.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And then, so talk about a little bit to your transition to the sheriff's office. Bedford's not a great big town. So
no, it's,
then you get thrown into what? Like 700 square miles after that?
Yeah. Bedford's back then it was 6.3 or something like that square miles. We had like 24 officers maybe. So yeah, I worked patrol at the PD and then went into investigations. I did criminal and narcotic investigations there. Worked a lot with the sheriff's office then, and eventually went over to the county and went from 6.3 or whatever to almost 800 square miles.
When you were in town, is that when you were on the TAC team because it was a joint?
No, it was not on the TAC team.
Okay,
then, no.
You didn't get it to the TAC team until you went.
Yeah, it was no longer joint at that point in time.
Okay,
yeah.
right.
So it was before me, and then somebody's feelings got hurt, and then
it never happens in this.
And then so then it was just the county, and then we brought the town back in at a later date. But.
All right, we'll talk a little bit about your transition to the county. You worked the road maybe a year or two before you went into
worked the road for 2 years. So. Was a deputy for 5 months, got promoted to corporal. So I got hired in May. I want to say by August I was corporal.
Okay.
In patrol on a shift, so second command on the patrol shift. Was corporal for probably a year, and then went into narcotics investigations as a investigator back there.
So on a shift, you were supervisor. You were like the second supervisor. You had a sergeant.
Yeah, it was pretty much the best. It was the best gig I ever had because you were in charge, but not really, unless the sergeant was off. And then so you're pretty much just backing up people. Not many reports to write. It was the best gig probably I ever had. In my career.
I don't know. The one with DEA was not bad.
That was not bad either. Yeah, there was no report writing there either. So.
Okay. All right. So you go into narcotics investigation. What's next up for you? With the narcotics, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my time as a narcotics investigator, it was kind of a cool time to be in narcotics because the stages right before when I went into narcotics, like nobody really ever talked outside of your unit, right? Mm-hmm. Like there's all this secret squirrel stuff going on, and nobody in our agency knew what we were doing for sure. And then there was certainly nobody in another agency that would know what we were doing, even though we're purchasing narcotics from people that may be their sources too. Right. And then me and I really felt like there was a corner that was turned, especially when I became a supervisor in narcotics, where one of the supervisors for the state police for their drug section came up, and we would just be sitting in an interview, and I would just type a name, ? And then he would type a name, ? And we, he's in Roanoke or wherever doing his interview, and I'm here doing my interview or whatever. And then it kind of clicked between us, at least, that we're not gonna, crime doesn't stop at jurisdictional boundaries. Right. So why should we?
And you're both looking at probably some similar, if not the same people.
Yeah. So you can't house everything. Well, this is only happening here because that's not accurate. Right. And if you think that way, then that's not going to. It's
not helpful.
It's not going to be fruitful.
Okay. All right. So, any cases that stand out to you as far as narcotics cases, or that you worked, or was that the meth time, or what was the main thing y'all dealt with?
So at the beginning, it was pills. Okay. Everything was pills, and then it transitioned.
That was the infamous pain train case.
It was, yes.
We won't talk about that one. It was a bigger pain for us than it was for any criminals.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
We had transitioned from pills to heroin.
Okay.
And then, then it went to shake and bake meth, where we were doing, a couple of meth labs a month, which, talk about a pain in the ass. I mean, you get a meth lab at 2:00 in the afternoon, buckle up, you're going to be there till 2:00 in the morning. So,
right.
Then that kind of trickled out because, they're only making a gram or so at a time. And then they found out that they could.
It's not the effort.
It's a lot of effort, right. A lot of danger for not a lot of
yield.
It's just.
Even math works out, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Yeah. But, so yeah, then it transitioned into, remember the first large quantity of meth I think we ever, and I say large quantity, it's really not now, but it was a quarter ounce of meth or something. It was like $1,200.
Right.
And I was like, man, that's going to be a lot of meth because I'd only seen only shake and bake meth. Occasionally you'd pop somebody that had some
couple grams
crystal or something, but nothing to this quantity. And then of course now we went to that to eventually we did a case where we got 3 kilos of meth, and that's a lot of meth. So especially for this part,
keep you awake for a while, right?
Yeah, you can sort a lot of screws with 3 kilos of meth.
No doubt about it. So meth, it goes into meth. Were you in narcotics when the fentanyl came in, or you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Talk about that a little bit.
So fentanyl first started coming in, and back then the heroin was sold a little bit differently, and I'm sure you can still get it this way, but you'd get like 10th of a gram bags, and the bags would have stamps on them, and the stamps would be, it would say Frank Lucas, or that'd be a smiley face, or a
collard greens, all of it.
Yeah, whatever, right? So it either said something or had a picture of some creature or something on it, and that's how we tracked it. And you could track it from here to Patterson, New Jersey.
There's no heroin coming out of New Jersey.
There is, sir.
No heroin.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, we worked a cool heroin case where we actually followed a guy from here to Patterson, New Jersey, and back, and stopped him here in Chambersburg with his load of heroin. So
how much was that?
64 bricks, I believe, is what that was.
So 60. I mean, that's almost 300, 300 or 400 hits, something like that.
Yeah,
it would. A lot.
Yeah, I mean, a brick is 50 bags. So
no, 3,000.
Yeah,
that's
So
it's a couple knuckle draggers trying to
do
math. I don't. I got my shoes on, so I don't think I can count.
I only have 9 fingers. So.
9.5. Shows your award-winning finger. That's amazing.
Look at it.
We'll leave it at that.
I will too. Yeah.
Well. All right. So really cool meth case. I know at some point while I was working with you, you ended up in Roanoke with the drug diversion with DEA. What was that like?
Yeah, it was interesting. You can't. It's almost virtually impossible to charge a medical doctor with almost anything.
No, absolutely.
Not that they're all crooked or anything like that. I'm not saying that by any stretch, but there was, and they put things in place now where you can't just go to a family clinician and receive oxycodone or whatever, but you have to go to a pain management facility or whatever nowadays. But back then, you could walk in and my back's been hurting the last couple days, and I can feel that where it's kind of bulging right there at your disc, or you get 360 pain pills, and then that turns into heroin, because where I was going with the heroin was that a 30 milligram oxycodone back in the early 2012 was $30 dollar milligram. Bag of heroin's $10 or whatever it was going for at the time. So it's cheaper. And then they started cutting. Back then they were cutting it with cinnamon and garlic and whatever crap they could find laying around that they could cut it with. And then they realized that you could cut it with fentanyl and it would be potent. And then people were getting hot shots and they were dying because they thought it was still cut with garlic or whatever. And they would use the same amount that they used yesterday, but this was a Frank Lucas bag, and yesterday's was a yellow smiley face bag, and it was 2 different bags coming from 2 different people, cut by 2 different things, and you didn't know what was in it, and you took it and you died. Because you're not used to that same quantity. So it's and that was really, I think, the turning point on when we started sharing information. Me and one of the supervisors for the state police would text back like, "Hey, did you guys have any overdoses yesterday from Frank Lucas bags?" And so that was kind of how we could track where the dope was coming from, was that way.
So with fentanyl the way it is now, and all the drugs, I feel like the cartels have done a really good job of transitioning everybody to synthetic narcotics. So they're easier to get across the border, and they don't have to depend on any type of growing season to get them in.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, like what you experienced with that as far as the meth, and I think everything now is pretty much meth and fentanyl.
Yeah, it is. Those guys have it down to a science. Whether it's cocaine or whether it's fentanyl or meth, like you said, it's pretty much down to a science. A lot of the methodology that they're using is, best place to hide an egg is in an egg crate, right? So it's kind of like working undercover. You're not really, a lot of people aren't actually undercover, but they grow a big beard and their hair out long. A lot of times you stand out more than you fit in, and your job is to fit in at that point,
Right.
to look like you belong
Right.
where you are. And the cartels use that same method. It's not like they're driving Porsches and stuff like that down the road delivering dope. They're driving Buicks and
No,
Chevy Corsicas and things like that because it fits in.
they fit in a lot better. So while we're talking about cartels, now that they've been designated terrorism organization, or well, I don't even know the wording that you're more familiar with the wording on that, but they're a terrorist organization.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about your experience with gangs, because I mean you are a gang specialist in Virginia.
Yeah.
And just talk about that process to be a gang specialist, and then let's go through just the different gangs that are operational in this area.
Yeah.
And
So
you had a huge case, and we'll talk about that in a little bit.
yeah. So I got designated as I went through a course with the Virginia Gang Investigators Association. It was probably in 2007, maybe, and became certified as a gang specialist within the state, and eventually got sworn in as a gang expert in court and things of that nature based off of training experience and things of that nature. But I also teach gangs at the academy, still lead instructor for street gangs at the academy here in Lynchburg. And I've been doing that for a long time. But I always kind of had an interest in it, I always listened to gangster rap when I was a kid. I was a little skater punk,
Yeah.
So I always listened to stuff like that, and it kind of just drew me to that aspect once I got into law enforcement. And I'll tell this to any cop that's listening: if you're not listening to gangster rap and you're a cop, then you are wrong.
Okay.
Because a lot of, especially nowadays, rap has a lot of information in it. It's not NWA's fuck the police.
Right.
It's where they're just giving their opinion on something. A lot of these guys, and they have been indicted on rap lyrics and things of that nature based off of things that they've admitted to in songs and things of that nature. So it's but not only that, it's also giving you information on wording that they're using and slang and terminology and things of that nature. So if you're in an interview and somebody says something, you already have familiarity on what that word means or what that phrase stands for. Or if you're listening to jail calls and two people are talking back and forth, you're going to be able to pick up on something that somebody else may not pick up on based off of stuff like that. So I just wanted to spit that out a little bit.
No, I mean, I think it's great information. I think sometimes we work in a little bubble and we don't
Yeah.
think about like what the other person's communicating. And if you can't speak their language, you're out of luck. And I know several times I've called you in and said, hey, I have no idea what they're talking about. I know one case in particular, they were flashing money on social media at a local school.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting to me that gang is marking their territory just like if they sprayed it.
Yeah.
They're tagging like this is ours.
Yeah.
So continue on. Like it's very interesting. So the gang stuff.
Yeah. So got certified, and there were gang taggings around through the county and stuff like that, but it wasn't like it was a major happening thing that was going on throughout the jurisdiction. But I know that one time I got brought up, Sheriff Brown and Sheriff Miller, Captain Miller back then, took me to the Board of Supervisors meeting one night where I was explaining to them we were trying to get some funding for some additional things. And, back then in the mid 2010s, we were looking at some of the other jurisdictions around us and how, and again, I said this earlier, but crime does not stop at jurisdictional boundaries, and there's a lot of spillover.
No, exactly.
And, Lynchburg definitely has a lot of gangs, a lot of gang activity, as does Roanoke.
So this is what I found interesting when we talked about it before. What is the difference between the gangs in Lynchburg and the gangs in Roanoke? Because I think everybody sees these ebbs and flows. They're like, well, Danville has a whole lot of homicides.
Sure.
Lynchburg seems to be on a run of gang related shootings.
Sure.
And then Roanoke seems to have relative calm. I shouldn't put that out there, but like,
Yeah.
I mean, at this point it's weird how that works.
Yeah.
Try to explain as best you can of just like how local gangs and then spinoffs and all that work and how that relates to the violence people see in their communities.
Yeah. So the gangs in Lynchburg are far more organized than the ones in Roanoke are.
Okay.
And by what I mean by that is they have more national affiliation. So things with Bloods, Crips, Gangster Disciples, Folk Nation, things like that. And the gangs in Roanoke are not. They don't have nearly the connection.
They're more neighborhood gangs.
More neighborhood gangs. And so how Lynchburg got started with the national affiliation, there were gangs, 10 years ago, there was a gang called, Floyd Street Soldiers. And, kind of how it got spun up was, one of them goes to prison.
Right.
And then it gets checked when it gets to the door, not by the guards, but by the inmates. What do you claim? I claim Floyd Street. I'm like, what the fuck is Floyd Street?
Right.
So you can't be in here and be Floyd Street. So now you got to claim something. So then he had to make claim, and then it all got back to the gang in Lynchburg, and now they're nationally affiliated. So it's
So what gangs are operational in Lynchburg that you know of?
Yeah, H-Ray Crips, Folk Nation is their Gangster Disciples, the Bloods, several different Blood sets, several different Crip sets. Yeah.
And I think it's safe to say a lot of the unsolved homicides that they're dealing with in Lynchburg are gang related.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. I mean, it's not just.
Yeah, and and then a lot of it is over turf, and a lot of their turf is all in the same area.
So
you know what I mean?
It's not a big area to fight over.
No,
very concentrated.
Yeah, and it's not like there may be one or two over in a nice neighborhood or whatever. Or at least that's where Mama's address is. But the majority of them are they hang out in one area of the city, or not just one street or one neighborhood necessarily, but one section of the city,
the geographical area.
And it has a lot of people in there that have either grown up in a gang, their family was gang members, things of that nature. And then, as people grow up and they evolve, and they turn into gang members themselves. So it's just been kind of a snowball effect.
It's kind of grown over the years.
Yeah.
As they grow up.
Yeah. And eventually that'll happen in Roanoke. And, Roanoke's population, of course, is larger than Lynchburg's population. And Roanoke definitely has its areas of violence. Even downtown, my wife looks at me all the time. She's like, "Oh, we're going to go downtown for dinner." I'm like, "No, I don't think we are." I have nothing down there for me. So, there's some nice areas downtown. There's lots of nice restaurants downtown. I'm not saying I don't go downtown or anything like that, but there's a lot of places downtown. You never know where you're going to end up and who you're going to be in front of.
Well, you don't know who's going to show up.
Yeah, I mean that's what I mean.
You get one or two, and
two people that don't get along, and all of a sudden bullets start spraying. Then what are you going to do? So
their accuracy is not great.
It's not.
I mean, if you're getting paid by the bullet, they're not very efficient.
It's not efficient at all.
Right.
And that's how a lot of victims become victims is. Two people. It's not like they're out, trying to find an innocent victim to take.
They just happen to be.
It just happens.
Wrong place, wrong.
Yeah.
Time.
Yep.
Well, all right. So and we'll go back to this. I think it's really important, and I want to devote a lot of the time. You are probably the only person in this area that has ever worked a violent homicide, gang-related homicide with a international gang, which was MS-13. I know everybody's talking about MS-13. We'll talk about that a little bit. Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit later because we found out at lunch you have an inside scoop. We'll give it out quietly. But just talk about your case. Raymond Wood was a young kid in Lynchburg.
Yeah.
And walk through what happened. Like you were out. You were just going about your day and you get a phone call, and what did...
Yeah, I was actually asleep. Working, being, the team leader on TAC team and narcotics supervisor over narcotics unit, typically didn't go home early.
Right.
But I went home early one day and I went to sleep at like 8:30, and got a phone call, and the guy on the other line was one of the command staff, and he said, "Hey, you asleep?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Get up, start walking around. I need you to think a little bit." I said, "Okay." So I started walking around. I'm like, "All right, what's up?" He's like, "Hey, we got a kid over here that was laying in the road, and he's got a lot of bodily injury." And the things that he was describing to me, I was like, "Man, that sounds like MS-13 to me." And he's like, he said, "Where are they from?" I said, "Well, MS-13 started in the United States, but they're primarily El Salvadorian street gang." And he said, "Well, we got a kid stopped, and he's from El Salvador." I said, "All right, I'll be there in a few minutes."
That's a clue.
So yeah, that's what the FBI would say. That's a clue. So, got over there to the crime scene first, and looked over, kind of what the situation was and what happened with the kid, and went back to the PD or to the sheriff's office, and before we started talking to this kid that was in there, was trying to figure out what happened and how we got here.
Yeah, I mean, well, you've got a young kid from Lynchburg in Bedford County.
Yeah.
And,
Well, at that point, we didn't know who he was.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't even know how old he was. Didn't know where he was from. We
Okay.
he had no identification on him or anything like
Okay.
that. We had no idea who he was at all.
So that I guess you started like missing persons, just trying to identify your victim.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we reached out to all the surrounding jurisdictions, like, hey, if you get a phone call in the morning, somebody's missing or whatever. And luckily that worked out because that's what happened.
Okay.
But I always tell this to everybody, So what we ended up figuring out, kind of what happened, was there was a kid that was involved in MS-13, but had not really risen to a rank of where he can actually partake in violent
Activity.
crimes and
Right.
things of that nature, right? So there's different ranks. The rank structure is a little different than most other gangs with MS. And so they had, scooped up this guy and brought him to this back road, and they made the driver drive up to the top of the hill and
Kinda look
wait
out.
a certain amount of time and then come back. And when he came back, he saw the kid sitting or laying in the road. There was a car parked right behind him, and
So this is at night.
this was at night. Yeah, it was like 10:30 at night by this point, and so he just floored it and went on by. And the lady was on the phone with 911. She thought that the kid had been hit by a car as he was walking or something like that on the left. And she says, like, "Hey, there's a black Honda that just rolled by me, driving a high rate of speed, and had Maryland tags on it." Guy gets down to the bottom of the road, turns left on 221. And we talked about how big Bedford County was, and I want to say it was 4 guys working that night. The kid pulls out in front of a deputy. I always tell everybody, I'm like, that was God. Otherwise, we would have never figured this out.
No, you just had a body in the
We would have had a
middle of
body in the middle of the road, and it still would have been an open, unsolved case. We would have never, ever figured this out. Then the next morning, so obviously the other guys had ran off, and the next morning, they had kind of held up in a barn somewhere over the night. It started raining eventually, and the farmer came in to get something out of the barn the next morning early, and found the guys sitting up there in the barn, and he gave them their phone, so he used the phone. So they called a guy that was here local and came to pick them up, but he was driving a Honda Del Sol, which is a 2-seater, and there was 4 of them, so he had to make a couple of trips. So he came, picked up 2 of them, dropped them off down the road, went back to pick up the other 2, and they ended up leaving. The farmer ends up calling 911 saying, like, "Hey, there's something not right here. Something's going on with this." And the Del Sol gets to the bottom of the hill, turns out on 221, pulls out in front of a cop. At that point, it's
another God thing.
yeah, and I was still at work, so this is 6 o'clock or 6:30.
So y'all are working hard trying to put
Yeah.
pieces together.
all night because the kid that we had in custody was not saying anything, and so we were pretty much waiting for ICE at that point, and we had no identification, we had no idea who he was, that sort of thing. So we were waiting on ICE to come in to help us with that part of it. So we ended up getting them stopped as a short pursuit, ended like right at Cottontown Road, and got them in custody.
So how many did you get in custody first?
Three.
And then did you?
Well, four technically.
Yeah. And then, so one at first and three more.
Mm-hmm.
How'd you find the last two?
A lot of work.
And that's where you ended up going to other states.
Yeah. So we worked we worked a lot in Prince George's County, Maryland, and in Long Island, New York. And I always tell everybody, you know, the kind of the fruits of this case were not only were we able to arrest, you know, MS-13 members based off a homicide that occurred here that we actually obtained information on, but also that based off of the phone dumps that we got from the people that we arrested, passing that information on to DEA and FBI in Prince George's County, as well as Prince George's County PD, Hydesville PD, and then to Long Island, New York, with the FBI up there as well. We were able to help them arrest the program leader for the East Coast for MS-13.
That's awesome.
And his name is Reaper. You can look him up. And myself and the Commonwealth's attorney went up there for the press conference when they made the arrest.
So they arrested a guy that, how many people you think you would have underneath him, like MS-13, other gangs?
Hundreds, if not thousands.
So Little Bedford County gets
Yep.
like a major target for the whole East Coast.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and that's the cool part of working cases like that, and that's why I always tell everybody, like, do as much as you can in law enforcement. Like, don't just be a ticket writer. I mean, it's fine if that's what you want to do, but like expand yourself a little bit and see what you can actually get out of this. You know, look what's past the traffic stop. Right. You know,
exactly.
and like, yeah, he was speeding 68 and a 55, but
what else?
What else is going on with this
body
guy?
in the back?
Yeah, right. So. Those are the types of things that.
So MS-13, based on your investigation, is a very organized group,
very structured. Yeah.
And how do they make most of their money?
Extortion.
Okay.
You can see, you know, you go to places that are highly populated with MS-13 members. You can see them going into, you know, privately owned businesses and receiving cash from them, sending it through Western Union,
like the almost old time, like Chicago mobs type things.
Yeah.
Talk about, like, so obviously that's very different for Bedford County. Like, you have a major case, it ends up in Bedford County. That's pretty significant.
Yeah.
So talk about what does it look like for you when you go into an area that is controlled by MS-13?
Like what the experience was?
Yeah. What was the experience?
Yeah, it was. Honestly, it was culture shock.
Okay.
Because, you know, we don't see that sort of thing. Not even, you know, I've worked a lot of cases with a lot of people in Roanoke and in Lynchburg and, you know, some fairly large cities, but
you've never seen one controlled completely by a criminal.
Not almost completely. No. I mean, it is, it was culture shock. It was a lot different than anything I had ever seen.
And so I guess, like, for me, and I think people in general, it's so far removed from them. I would say most people in Bedford County, some of them will remember it, but I'd say, like, most people don't realize, like, when they're listening to stuff on the news and what's happening nationally, just really how that it actually comes home to a small area like Bedford County.
Yeah. I mean, again, the spillover is there. You're going to have spillover. You're going to have, and you know, how some of these members ended up here was because they were wanted on homicides in Maryland, and then the gang shipped them here.
And so these guys are not like coming in to do work. They're coming in. They're already in the area.
Yeah.
They're already under the surface.
For sure.
You just don't see them.
Yep.
And then they just all of a sudden they decide they're going to be violent, and
Yep.
this is what happens.
Yeah, and most of the violence is geared from some sort of disrespect. And again, it's not like they're just waiting for somebody to walk down the road that they can, you know, hit with a machete or whatever. It's usually geared towards some sort of disrespect. On their side. Everything in gang culture is respect and disrespect.
So I think one of the things that we try to cover as much as we can on this show in particular is how does the local population prepare itself for, like, I think it's really easy to go, hey, MS-13 is a problem in Bedford County right after a homicide.
Sure.
But it goes away. It doesn't go away, though.
Yeah.
It's still underneath the surface. They're still here. They're still violent. And I think it's interesting, like the conversations people have on TV and stuff. And you've got a sitting, what was it, a congressman or a senator that goes over there and takes up
Yeah.
for a gang member. Talk about what you know about the Garcia guy that got sent. I think everybody wants to say, well, Trump is pushing this guy. This is unfair. He's a good family man, all this other stuff. Based on your experience as a gang specialist and your inside information, 100%, what is he?
He's involved in MS-13. The other people in the vehicle, minus one, were all identified as MS-13 members.
Mm-hmm.
The clothing he had on was indicative of MS-13. The other members would not have allowed him to wear those clothing items had he not been a part of MS-13.
So, quick question. So, if he was not MS-13 and he was wearing MS-13 clothing inside a vehicle with other members, they would have taken that as disrespect, correct?
100%.
And what would have happened to him if he wasn't MS-13 and was wearing the colors?
He would have been at least violently assaulted, if not killed.
But he's one of them,
Yep.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing, and we don't have to go into all the details, but like from my standpoint, when you work criminal cases, you have 4 different people.
Yeah.
All of them are going to tell the story that works best for them. It's where their information intersects is where the truth is.
Yeah.
And I think the truth in this is 100%. This dude has all the makings of it.
Yep.
Correct? All the knowns, like what he's wearing, who he's with, activities he's involved in. One of them, I believe, they're actually trafficking humans, correct? That he was stopped on. So my question is, what is the other way? The other way is human sources, correct? And human sources are saying 100% he is in MS-13.
Yeah. And they let, the looking at the entire picture, they let one of the guys go that they could not identify as an MS-13 member, whether that was through personal information or through any kind of identifying insignia that he was not part of MS-13, that they could not identify him as MS-13 or as a gang member here in the United States, and they let him walk. So, it's all only circled around this one individual. And like I said, the things that they wear and the things that they do in the areas that they control is done for a reason and a purpose. And if you're doing that sort of thing and know about that sort of thing and you're in that area, then you probably just messed up.
Yeah. So it's almost like a status symbol for somebody that's like wealthy. They'll buy a Jaguar or a car like that.
Sure.
Same thing, except you're not going to, other than your car maybe getting stolen.
Sure.
But if they're wearing gang clothing, hanging out in areas that gangs frequent, and they aren't part of that gang, they're going to get beat in or beat out.
Yeah.
Really quick.
Yeah.
It's not like that is, to me, one of the things that never does make sense is the level of violence that these dudes commit for these. Well, you wore this clothing, you showed disrespect. It's almost like children.
Yeah.
With machetes.
Yeah.
So,
and a lot of times, and minus MS-13 graffiti or tattoos, like tagger graffiti on trains and stuff like that. Some of it's awesome. Like downtown Roanoke, like there's whole sides of buildings that are done in spray paint. It's amazing, to have that kind of
talent.
And I always compare that gang graffiti is like letting your 6-year-old loose with a crayon.
Yeah.
You can tell the difference.
Yeah.
In what you're looking at. But you make a really good point a few minutes ago about the people forget about things, and whether that's in relation to gang stuff that's going on or violence. I mean, look at all of the school shootings. Take school shootings, for example.
Right.
School shooting happens or a mass shooting event occurs, and it's the hot topic for 4 or 5 days.
Right.
And then it disappears.
Just long enough to get people signed up for training, and then it goes away.
And then it's gone. And then it's not a problem anymore until it becomes somebody else's problem. And then it's a hot topic again for 4 or 5 more days. And then
so how do we in law enforcement, I know we talked about this a little bit at lunch, but like how do we in law enforcement do a better job explaining, like, there is a violent component of society.
Yeah.
We can either interdict that violence at a place of our choosing, or I don't believe that violent activity is going to just disappear.
Yeah.
at all. Like they are violent. That's what they do, and they are looking for prey. They prey on the weak.
Yeah.
And if law enforcement continues to get weak, I feel like we have a lot of officers that are in harm's way. Realistically, I remember when I came into this occupation, there were some people that established the law, and we didn't deal with a lot of the stuff that people deal with today because they knew better.
Yeah.
And there was order. And I feel like right now, like, I don't know if the public is, I think the public wants it. I just think leadership has to do a better job of saying, like, this is where we are at.
Well, I think one of the problems is with that aspect of this, the public is aware of what law enforcement has done or is doing or involved in because it's broadcasted on social media and the news and whatever else. A gang, there was a shooting in Roanoke earlier today.
Okay.
All right. I saw it on Facebook, but I didn't see it anywhere else. So, like,
are we just not
right? Like,
legacy media just not reporting it, or what?
What are we reporting and when? And maybe they're waiting for details and things like that. But with that being said, I've never been involved in any case that's ever gone on the news and then media being like, watch it later and be like, yep, that's what happened. Like, it's never been that way, because we're not going to, if it's an ongoing investigation, we're not telling the media the entire thing. We're telling them this is what happened. This is all I can say because it's an ongoing investigation. And then they put their spin on it and then it's spun up in the media and whatever else. But when you look at what society knows, it goes back to the sheepdog wolf situation, right?
Like your hat.
Yeah, like my hat. Like, you're either going to be a lion and chasing a gazelle, or you can be a sheep and lie there and die. Mm-hmm. Like, what are you going to do? So, and I'm not saying that's going to happen to everybody, but everybody. It seems like a large portion of citizens have ostrich syndrome with their heads in the sand.
Right.
And they choose to believe that things like this doesn't happen, doesn't exist. And, that's where people like us got into law enforcement, was because law enforcement should have a capacity for violence but not to cause violence without it being met, using violence only as a source to stop a bad
It's only
individual.
used on wolves. I mean, you look at Grossman's book, it is, you got sheepdogs, wolves, and sheep.
Yeah.
And the sheepdog is scary because he looks just like a wolf, but he will never injure the sheep.
That's right.
And I think that's the difference, is I think that there are a lot of sheep out there, but I think leadership is not doing a very good job of telling the sheep, like, this is what is out there. Like, you are just living on borrowed time at this point. Like, they are at that realistically with China and Russia and all these other countries, and with these gangs, people want to piss and moan about what Donald Trump is doing, like kicking people out of the country. You've got a sitting senator going overseas.
A couple of them.
Yeah. Going overseas and taking up for them. Who in their right mind thinks, like, hey, I want to align myself with somebody that chops innocent people up to death?
And that's, I think that is that's part of it, where people, unless something happens to somebody that it matters to,
directly impacts,
then there's no need for change. Mm-hmm. Once something happens to somebody or somebody's family that can actually cause change, then that's when change occurs.
Okay.
And like I've kind of seen that aspect of it, where, an elected official's son had, injured his mother and killed himself or something like that. And then all of a sudden it was, all right, we got to change what we're doing with mental health. Mm-hmm. And so, like, that was the hot topic for the time being. And there was change that came about with that. But before then, as law enforcement, we're screaming mental health, mental health, mental health, mental health. There's all this challenge that we have in front of us. There's no help for anything. And then on top of that, there's no help for anybody with, like, drug addiction, where I've had people call me and say, Kev, can you meet me at the hospital? And I go to the hospital and meet him, and I walk inside with him and said, hey, this guy's a drug addict and he relapsed last night, and he called me today because he doesn't want to go down this road anymore. What can we do for him? Sorry, there's nothing that we can do for you.
No,
And
that 100.
if you're not looking for help, if you get arrested, then you go to drug court, and then you get help because you have to have help because they're going to force you to get the help because that's where you are in court. And so, like, there's help for people that don't want it, but there's no help for people that do want it. So
it's insane. I remember getting out with a girl that still had a needle in her arm, and I took her to Lynchburg General. I was like, y'all need to help her. And I told her to call me when she got out of rehab. She called me later that night and told me, well, they have a bed opening up for me in a week.
yeah,
And I was like, she's not going to make it.
no, she's not going to make it.
No, she's addicted to this. She's shooting up in a parking lot of a restaurant.
Yeah,
She's not going to make it through the weekend.
Yeah.
Much less one more day. Like, she is at the lowest point of her life, and there's nothing to help her.
Yeah, and it's not about like scaring the citizens into believing things that are going on. It's about education, and educating them on certain things. So, it's not like I have a plan for, how this would work or whatever else. But
Well, that's the only reason I invited you here, is to give me a plan.
I don't have a plan. but like, it's like the definition of insanity, right? You keep trying the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, right?
Right.
It's like Cat Williams said, you keep trying shit and trying shit, trying shit, trying shit. Ain't going to work, right? Like you have to change your entire view on it, and then change. Like if the method that we're using right now is not working, okay, like let's regroup on this and figure out a different method.
Right.
And it's like having a drug house where there's no hierarchy here. There's just a bunch of drug users,
right, just
that may be sharing drugs amongst themselves. And this guy today is going to collect these 9 people's money, and they're going to go to Roanoke and buy a quarter ounce of meth and bring it back. They're all going to smoke it, and then tomorrow you're going to get the money, and you're going to go to Roanoke and bring it back. They're all going to smoke it.
Somebody has to steal to pay for it.
True.
Okay.
Yeah. Besides that fact.
Yeah.
But like, what are you going to like? What is the goal here? Like, you have to figure out one. Like, all right, we've got a pile of people using dope in a house. How are we going to stop this from occurring? Like, come up with a game plan on how you're going to do that. Yeah.
Let's go after the source.
Right. So,
and their source.
Right.
All the way up.
So figure out how you're going to get to that source.
And
so then you figure out that, then it makes an impact. Of course, the guy's going to be replaced tomorrow. I get it. Totally understand that. But at least you've taken him out for today, because now you may not be able to go buy dope from that guy.
No, exactly right.
So, you have to figure out a strategy in order to move forward. And if you don't have a strategy to move forward, then you're just doing the definition of insanity. Yeah. You're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Back to education. One of the things that I think is the most frightening as a parent is how much recruiting Lynchburg gangs do in the school system.
Yeah.
It is absolutely insane. And a lot of the violence is kids, juveniles.
Yeah.
So what can you tell parents, like, hey, this is what you need to pay attention to. This is what you need to look at. These are the things that are important for you as a parent to keep your kid out of that type of a situation. And then on top of that, how do people keep themselves safe and what to look out for to keep out of those violent situations themselves?
So as far as parents go, a lot of it is just awareness on who your kid is and who their friends are, and who they're hanging out with, what time of day they're hanging out, where they're hanging out, that sort of thing. And unfortunately, there's a lot that's going to happen out of school that, or while they're hanging out or whatever, that you can't control.
Right.
And
you can't control, but if you're aware of it, that's the first step.
It's about being aware of where your kids are. And, there used to be the commercial used to come on TV when we were kids, do you know, it's 9 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are?
Right.
When was the last time they put that commercial on there, No. But that was, back in the 90s where
you knew they were in the neighborhood on a bike or something else.
Yeah. I came home when my dad whistled, So, but yeah, but there was all these little subtle reminders, and now we're doing subtle reminders for locking up your car at night because kids are going through neighborhoods, lifting up door handles, and rummaging through cars and stealing your stuff. But there's not a lot of reminder for where your kids, who are they with. And I'm not saying keeping them on lockdown, you don't want to make them resentful. No. But at the same time, because then they're really going to cause problems.
Absolutely.
But
be aware of the
be aware
areas.
of where they are. Like we have Live 360. My daughter was in the car the other day, going 85 miles an hour down 81. Like I got an alert while I was mowing the grass saying there's police lights on your daughter. It wasn't real police lights, but saying that she was driving 85 miles an hour, and she wasn't driving, but her friend was. But it alerted me, like, use things like that. Like,
Pump
if
the
you have
brakes.
if you have an iPhone, it doesn't cost anything. Get freaking Live 360. Figure out where your kid is, and
Is most from what your experience is though, most of the stuff now that gangs do, they're very blatant about it, and it's all on social media,
a
correct?
lot of it is on social media. Yeah,
Any other
and
places to look?
social media is probably the primary. I mean, so there's so much social media now, and God, I would use it when I was in dope and like go on Snapchat and take a picture of my service weapon and some dope and send it out on Snapchat in my fake account. You get hit up all like, oh, fire, whatever. And they don't
You
know.
didn't put your thumb on there?
No, then I would know.
Okay.
So,
I know.
but yeah, Snapchat, Instagram, all of that stuff is, especially as a parent, like you should definitely be monitoring what they're putting on there, what the songs they're putting on there are. I'm not saying that they're all bad. I'm not saying that I don't listen to them. I'm just saying that pay attention to what they're saying because, and then pay attention to like clothing. Clothing is like a progressive.
If your kid suddenly becomes a Bulls fan,
Yeah, I mean, well, and all right, so take the Chicago Bulls for example. I'm not saying that everybody that's a Chicago Bulls fan is a gang member.
I'm a fan because of Michael Jordan, but
All right.
that was years ago.
So let's talk about Michael Jordan. So yeah, it was years ago. So you get out with a couple of guys, and a couple of them are wearing Chicago Bulls stuff. Who's your favorite Bulls player? Oh, Michael Jordan. Oh, Michael Jordan. What? Who else? Oh, Scottie Pippen. Oh, Scottie Pippen. Yeah. You got anybody that's playing like right now that you're a fan of? They probably can't answer because they don't know.
They just know the history.
They just know the history, right? So they know the most popular players,
Right.
So, but that's what the way they're going to answer. If they can't answer you, it's like my kids coming upstairs wearing a Sublime shirt and be like, name 3 songs before you can wear that shirt to school. Like if you can't name 3 songs, then go change until you learn them, right? So like, I see all these kids all the time wearing Nirvana or DMX or whatever shirts and like name 3 songs, you can't wear it. So do the same thing with basketball or Texas Rangers, So go back to the Bulls. There's a couple of different gangs that could potentially wear Chicago Bulls outfits, right? The Bloods, its colors are blue and or red and black. Michael Jordan, the number was 23. 2 + 3 is 5. 5 is there's 5 rules to being a Blood. So like, or they go by the number 5. So there's lots of different mentality that goes inside of that, and then they'll switch and wear something else, right?
Right.
Certain gangs are wearing like Texas Rangers hats. Like go to Roanoke and ask a kid in Roanoke, like, what's your favorite player on Texas Rangers?
Why Texas Rangers?
Star? Trey.
Okay.
So like 8 Trey.
Okay.
So they're wearing the Texas because it's got a big T on the front of it. So,
Okay.
But yeah, a lot of sports teams are utilized for, Georgetown Hoyas is one. Hover over on your ass, slobs. So like Crips will wear that.
Oh, really?
So,
So
who do you know went to Georgetown? Get out of here. Like,
Yeah. I mean, that's my question. Is it seems like you pretty much have to have your hand on the pulse all along.
yeah,
And if
because
you
it changes
don't,
as soon as it's just like anything, like in prison. Like people are going to sneak things in a certain way until they get caught, and then they have to change it up, right?
Right.
And like there's all this, gang graffiti is this, or the gang alphabet is this until they figure it out, and then once they figure it out, now we're going to change it to this.
What can law enforcement do? I feel like what you're describing is what like what we've talked about before, as far as we react to the school shootings, we react to violent incidents. How do we become proactive?
So that is where leadership comes into play, where you have leadership that comes up with active strategies in order to prevent things from occurring as opposed to responding to things that have already occurred.
Then what do we do with the general public to prepare them for, hey, you are probably going to see more law enforcement, but you're also, and there's probably a good chance is you're going to see a video of a police officer going hands on with somebody, and it's probably not going to make your weak heart happy.
Well, there's several things. One, I'm a huge fan of like the Citizens Police Academy.
Okay.
All right. And I feel like if your agency is not doing it, most do, but if your agency is not doing one, then you definitely should. It's beneficial because when the classes like I was teaching in Citizens Police Academy, like it was the same class that I was teaching at the academy. Right. And I always tell people, like, hey, look, there's going to be cussing in here. There's going to be videos in here that you're going to see that's not going to make you feel comfortable. There's going to be language used that you're not going to feel comfortable with. I have to tell, like, academy students that stuff now. You know, like my first screen is a big parental advisory, explicit lyrics thing. Like, you're going to be offended. I'm not doing this to offend you, but you may be offended because
this may be offensive.
This may be, I'm not trying to. But, that experience, people going through, and we've had like repeats, like coming back through because they thought it was so well put together. The problem is
you or your presentation.
The people coming back through Police Academy, Citizens Police Academy.
Okay.
But like, there's typically like 12 people or something like that. The room should be packed. And I get like people have lives and it's a pain in the ass to like get up and go do something at 6 o'clock in the evening and things like that. Like I've got 6 kids. I've got baseball and softball and basketball and soccer like every freaking day.
Right.
But like you have to make what's important, just like a police department or a sheriff's office has to make what's important. And also outside of Citizens Police Academy, there should be something that the agency can do, whether it's a weekly basis, bi-weekly basis, whatever, giving a report on what has happened. And I know people can go and look it up online or, see but they won't, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's taking that initial step. Like that's what they're not going to do. They're not going to take the extra step needed to do something outside of what their normal day-to-day is, unless it's something that had some sort of effect on them. And a lot of people don't know how to research things. Like they're going to go to the court's website to look up something, and then they can't figure out how to, because it's not an easy process going into the Virginia courts, then trying to figure out, all right, what court, all right, now I'm in the county, but what court was it in? No, they don't know the differences and things like that. But doing, having a bi-weekly video of someone on the command staff giving, a weekly report and posting it on Facebook. These are the things that we dealt with that could stand out for you as a citizen in this area, for you to be aware of, or hey, we're hosting a 4-hour or a 2-hour training block on X subject.
Right.
Please come and join us. We'll have pizza or something. I don't know. I mean, people come in for, I'll do anything for pizza and beer. So, so there's, stop. So, but you know what I mean? Like you have to make it worth their while, right? Mm-hmm. To make them pay attention to stuff.
Right.
But if you as a leader are not making that extra step in order to make your citizens aware of what's occurring or what the potential is based off of information that you have knowledge of, then I would say you're probably wrong, because those citizens that live in that area deserve to know exactly what there is. And so they don't pretend like their town is Mayberry when it's not, but they only know what they know.
Yeah. I look at it and I think about, from my standpoint, when I look at how different people look at things and how, like in communities, how things are, I perceive it to be this. I think one of the funniest things, it's amusing to me, but I have a sick sense of humor sometimes. But it is always amusing to me when a violent incident happens in somebody's neighborhood and the first thing they say is like, we never thought it would happen here.
Yeah.
Well, it is. Like, it is eventually going to hit somebody's home.
Yeah.
It might not be yours today, but at some point it is going to hit you, because, like, there are a whole lot of people that came over across the border illegally.
Sure.
They paid a lot of money to get here.
Yep.
To a violent criminal terrorist organization.
Yep.
So the math is there. Start paying attention. And I really wish that we, in our occupation, would do a better job of telling the general public, hey, we're sorry that this is not palatable to you,
Yeah.
but the other option is anarchy. You look at Minneapolis,
Yeah.
and let's defund the police. How'd that work out?
Yeah, they just put general citizens on their internal affairs board. So when you get a complaint now as a Minneapolis police officer, you go before your internal affairs investigation to people that have never worked in law enforcement or any kind of public service. They're just general citizens that are now employed as internal affairs. Like, how are they going to fairly, like, we don't do that for medical doctors when they get complaints. We don't do that for attorneys that get filed, bar complaints. Like, you go before the bar of attorneys. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, like, there's no, you can't do that to people. So,
Yeah, and people wonder why law enforcement is
Yeah.
so beat down.
and like, don't get it twisted. Like, there's a lot of people that are in this country that should not be in this country that are perfectly wonderful people that I have zero, that will never cause anybody any harm or problem. So it's not about that. It is about the people that are here that are going to cause problems and violence. And, with gang culture anymore, it used to be that they were just fighting over drug turf and that was it. Well, now you have human trafficking involved, and where you have drug dealers and gang bangers keeping girls in hotels room, just feeding them dope. And while they're
nobody ever addresses that. Nobody ever.
Yeah.
They'll arrest the prostitute because that's the easiest.
Yeah.
thing. They won't look at the fact of like, hey, there is a whole organization supporting this.
Yeah. They're just feeding her heroin, sitting in there. She's doing her dope and
Doing whatever.
And they're paying guys coming in there, and the money's not going to her.
No.
And like, she's just being trafficked and being moved around, and she'll be here for a week and a half, and then she's gone somewhere else. Like, that's the reality that people choose not to.
That doesn't happen in Lynchburg and Roanoke.
No, Lord, no.
Well, I guess that's a good place to end it because I don't know. I just wish there was something without a catastrophic event like 9/11 that would wake people up and go, hey, we understand police reform is necessary.
Yeah.
But sometimes we've gone too far to the
Yeah.
other side. You've paralyzed law enforcement.
Yeah, and you're not going to be a successful society when you handicap the people that are there to protect the people that choose not to believe that things happen.
Well, that's pretty poetic and a good way to end.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you coming on, brother.
Thanks, man.
All right.